Good morning, dear students.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. In the earlier lecture, we have seen introductory aspects of the membrane. We have seen the structure of the membrane. I gave you an assignment about the different models that have been proposed for the membrane structure. We have seen the biochemistry of the membrane and some of the essential properties, fundamental properties of the membrane. And then we have seen the important concept that is about the asymmetry of membrane. And we have seen that there are many different kinds of proteins which are associated with the membrane. And these proteins are not always, they don't have a definite, we can say, symmetry. Okay. That is to say, some of the proteins have their amino groups protruding outside in the cytoplasm within the cell, that is the cytoplasm, while some of the proteins would have the same group exposed on the outside of the cell. Okay, so that is what gives the membrane a structural asymmetry. And then we have also seen that some proteins, like for example the channel proteins, which are involved in the transport of different kinds of molecules or ions. Okay, these proteins are going to transport the particular substances in one direction only. Okay, and that is why we have seen that the membranes are asymmetric in terms of the function also. Okay, so there is structural as well as functional asymmetry in the biological membranes. Okay, then I think we had just about started with this slide, but the lecture got over. Okay, so today we are going to see, just a minute. Okay. So essentially the membranes are made up of lipid molecules. I think you already know about the structure of a lipid. Okay, a phospholipid. Mostly these membranes are made up of phospholipids. That is, the glycerol is the backbone molecule. Okay, and to this glycerol there are fatty acid tails. Okay, so there are two fatty acid tails which are there, and then there is a polar group, that is the phosphate group. Okay, so the head groups of the lipids, as they are called, they are polar in nature, and the tail groups, that is the fatty acid tails, are the non-polar groups which are attached to the central glycerol. Okay, and if the phosphate group is not there, then probably you know that that is called as a triacyl glycerol, isn't it? Or triglycerides, we also call them as triglycerides. But in the phospholipids, one of the acyl tail, okay, one of the tail is replaced with the phosphate group, and therefore there are two fatty acid tails. And I think I have shown this diagram here for your understanding, but let me see if I can make it a big magnified. Can you see that these are the two tails? These are actually long aliphatic chains, and these chains could be either made up of saturated bonds or unsaturated. So if it is unsaturated, then there are double bonds in this structure, and the presence of the double bond again would probably give a certain structure. Okay, you can see a bent structure here. That is because of the presence of a double bond. So the double bond could be either the groups are cis groups, or there are trans groups. Okay, depending on that, they will have certain structural shape to the molecule. Okay, and this red color which is shown here is the head group, that is the phosphate group. Okay, and this phosphate is actually replacing one of the acyl chains. Okay, one of the chain is replaced with the phosphate group. And then you see here is a membrane structure, and this is essentially a bilayer structure. That is to say, there are two different layers of the fatty acids here. Okay, and because of the polar and non-polar characteristics, that is amphipathic molecules, that is the both the groups, that is hydrophobic group and hydrophilic groups, are there in that polymer. Okay, so in this polymer you find all the head groups are exposed outside. It may be the cytoplasm, or it could be the extracellular medium in which the cells are present. Okay, and the hydrophobic groups are all turned inwards. That is because they do not like to be associated with water molecules. They are water repelling groups, and therefore they are always on the outside here. Okay. Now, if this particular lipid structure, okay, if the lipid molecule is put in water, for example, it is immiscible in water, that is one thing. But then in the water, there is something which would happen to the molecule. The molecule would spontaneously form a structure whereby all the head groups, the hydrophilic head groups, will be exposed on the outside, and all the hydrophobic groups will tend to hide themselves. Okay, they will try to avoid water, and therefore they will be hidden from water, and therefore a characteristic kind of a structure is formed, and that is called as an oil globule, and that is also called as a micelle. Okay, have you heard this word micelle? I have written it here on the slide. Okay, so these are spherical structures, and that is because of a peculiar arrangement whereby the hydrophobic tails are inside. Okay, they are excluding the water molecule, so you will not find any water molecule inside. Okay, all the water is driven out, right? And the head groups which are hydrophilic in nature, they will always be in contact with the water. The blue colored groups here are the phosphate groups or polar groups. Okay, so this is one structure which can be which will form spontaneously in water. So the moment you add oil to water, they will make such globules or micelles. Okay, these are very small structures, and this is another kind of a structure which is obtained because of the hydrophobic and hydrophilic nature, that is amphipathic nature of the lipid molecules. Okay, so we have this membrane structure, membrane bilayer, where we have these two layers, the head group, phosphate group, the tail groups, and then the tail groups of another layer, and the head group of the other layer. Okay, so all the hydrophobic tails are towards each other, facing each other, and they are expelling the water molecule. There is no water inside, and all the head groups or polar groups are exposed on the outside. Okay, so this is how the membrane, a biological membrane, would actually look like. But again, one of the interesting thing is that we should know is the moment you put a membrane in water, okay, if this is put in the water, then of course these tails here, okay, they are actually in contact with the water. Okay, just imagine that if I put this piece of membrane bilayer in water, then no doubt that these hydrophilic groups will be in contact with water, but somehow these hydrophobic groups are now also going to be in contact with water, and that is not allowed. Okay, because these are hydrophobic groups, they are going to hide themselves, and the one way they would hide themselves is by the spontaneous formation of a spherical structure of this membrane, okay, which you can see it here. Okay, so this kind of a structure, spherical structure, in which the membrane, in which the hydrophobic region is sandwiched between the two hydrophilic regions, the inside and the outside. Okay, this particular structure is called as a liposome. I hope you have heard this word sometimes, liposomes. Have you heard it? Yes or no? Am I audible to all of you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this particular structure is called as a liposome because it is actually a membrane bilayer structure. If you compare it with the micelle, then the micelle is a monolayer structure. Okay, whereas this is a bilayer structure, because here inside you have hydrophilic group, outside also you have the hydrophilic groups. Here inside you have hydrophobic groups, and outside is the hydrophilic region. Okay, so that is the difference between these. And if you know this, I do not know whether you know it, but in the field of medical sciences or pharmaceutical sciences, these structures are very, very important, because what is done is drug molecules can be incorporated in this spherical structure. Okay, so for example, if a particular drug molecule is hydrophobic, then it can be safely placed inside this micelle. Okay, and then these micelles are given as as a drug delivery vehicle. Okay, they are used as a drug delivery vehicle, and when they are consumed by the human, okay, then it would go probably to the desired organ, desired place where the action of that drug is required, and thereby some kind of a signal, that molecule, the hydrophobic molecule, will be released out, and then it will have its action on the tissue. Okay, and if a particular drug is a hydrophilic drug, then there is a problem in putting it inside the micelle, and therefore the liposomes are used for carrying the hydrophilic drugs. Okay, so the mode of action is the same. This is carrying the drug to the desired place. Okay, that is called as targeted drug delivery. There are certain kinds of molecules which can be attached on the outside surface, and these molecules will seek a particular place or particular site in the body by what is called as the popular ligand receptor kind of an interaction. Okay, so if a particular ligand is attached here on the outside, either here or here, okay, and then this drug is delivered, then what would happen is that ligand will seek, okay, it will find out the proper kind of a cell. If it may be a cancer cell, for example, and that cancer cell has certain kinds of receptors on the surface. Okay, so this molecule on the outside is going to find out that receptor and specifically bind to that receptor. And therefore, this micelle or liposome is not going to bind to any normal cell. It will bind only to the cancer cell. And once that kind of binding interaction has taken place, then the interaction itself is a signal for that liposome or the micelle to get disintegrated, and then the drug will be released at the particular site. Okay, so that will prevent wastage of a lot of drugs, because these drugs are quite costly. That is one thing. And if these drugs are going to interact with some other cells of the body, normal cells, then that would create some side effects. Okay, but if it is this kind of a targeted drug delivery, then only the cancer cells will be killed, because the drug is going to the cancer cell only, and it is not going to harm the normal cells. Okay, so that was just a small piece of information which I wanted to tell you. We go to the next slide. Yes, then we come to the different types of proteins which are associated with the membrane. So essentially we have two different types. One is called as the integral protein, which is firmly attached to the membrane. And sometimes these proteins are also called as membrane spanning proteins, because they can actually traverse the width of the membrane. Okay, so they are present from one end of the membrane to the other, one side of the membrane to the other side, completely spanning that space. Okay, so they are called as membrane spanning proteins. Okay, many proteins are not membrane spanning, but they are still integrated deeply within the membrane. Right, so integral proteins are both those which are anchored within the membrane and those which are actually spanning the membrane. Then there are peripheral proteins which are rather loosely associated with the membrane. They can be removed from the membrane very easily by using certain mild treatments like change in the pH or adding some kind of a salt, okay, or a very mild detergent, you can say. Whereas the integral proteins can be removed from the membrane only by using certain harsh treatments like strong detergents, okay, or certain agents which will actually cause damage to the membrane. Okay. So I think we have already seen this slide earlier. I will just skip this. Okay, that is something about how to know whether a particular protein is anchored within the membrane, whether it is a membrane spanning protein, or whether it is just associated with the membrane loosely, either from the inside or outside of the membrane. So for that, we have a certain method whereby we use reagents, okay, reagents which cannot actually cross the membrane. Okay, and then, for example, if it is the enzyme trypsin, for example, then the trypsin cannot actually enter inside the membrane. Okay, it will just go close to the membrane, and then the trypsin will cleave a particular protein. If the protein is cleaved, and you can find that the product of that cleavage, if you can estimate that particular protein, the part of the protein which is coming out, then it is going to be understood that that particular protein was associated loosely with the membrane. Okay, But if the treatment with trypsin doesn't result in any kind of protein, any amount of or fraction of the protein coming out of the membrane, then that would mean that the protein is deeply integrated within the membrane. So that is how we can find out whether the protein is peripheral protein or an integral protein. And then even sometimes if it is an integral protein, then a part of the protein or a particular domain may be exposed on the outside. So in that case, the trypsin will cleave that domain, and that domain will be estimated that the domain can be observed. Okay, when it comes out of the membrane, and then it will be possible to know what is the kind of the protein, whether it has domains which are exposed on the outside or inside in the cytoplasm, and whether it is a membrane spanning protein or not. Okay. Here is an example of a protein which is called as a glycophorin molecule. Now this molecule has an amino terminal domain, amino terminal region, okay, which has carbohydrate chains, so they can also be determined. And this particular end of the protein, that is amino terminal end, is on the outer surface of the protein. Okay, then the carboxy terminal part of the protein is actually protruding inside. It is inside in the cytoplasm. Okay, then these amino and carboxy terminal domains, when they have been analyzed, okay, in the laboratory, they have been analyzed, they have been sequenced, and then it was found that both the amino and the carboxyl terminals have polar residues. Okay, that is, they are hydrophilic residues. Then there is a particular segment which has been identified, and that segment is having amino acid residues from 75 to 93. So almost there are, say, 17, 18 residues, and these residues are hydrophobic amino acids. Okay, hydrophobic amino acids. And then it has been again found out that these amino acids from 75 to 93, these are all inside the membrane. Okay, so that is a membrane spanning protein with a certain number of amino acids present inside the membrane, and there are certain amino acids which are exposed on the two faces of the membrane, that is on the cytoplasmic face as well as on the exterior side of the membrane. Okay. This is the structure of glycophorin. This is just for your understanding purpose. Okay, so this is the membrane bilayer, and within the membrane, the yellow colored region of the protein glycophorin is shown, which is the membrane spanning region. Okay, and this is the other portion which is facing outside in the external medium, and there is a region which is again facing in the cytoplasm. Okay, so this is the inside region, this is the outside region. You can also call it as a domain. Okay, cytoplasmic domain or the external domain, and this region is the membrane spanning region, right? Then another interesting thing that has been studied is that the glycoproteins are on the outside surface. Can you see the red colored things here? The red colored things are actually the sugar residues. Okay, so the proteins which are associated, or amino acids which are associated with the sugar moieties, that is, it is a glycoprotein. Okay, glyco means sugar protein combination. Okay, so these sugar residues are always attached on the outside part, that is outside domain of the protein, right? Okay, then we go to the next. Okay, something little more about the integral proteins. Okay, integral proteins, as I have told you, that essentially they must have certain amino acids which are hydrophobic. Okay, and it is only because of the hydrophobic amino acids that a protein can anchor itself within the membrane. Okay, because membrane itself is hydrophobic region, and therefore by hydrophobic interaction, these two kinds of material, that is the membrane and the protein, they can actually remain associated with each other. Okay. Now there are some proteins which have multiple hydrophobic sequences. There are many hydrophobic sequences in the same protein, that is, or same polypeptide, you can say. And then these many a times these hydrophobic sequences have been found to have the alpha helical conformation. Okay, so I think you have already studied about the alpha helix structure of the protein or the beta sheet. Have you studied that? The secondary structure of proteins. Yes or no? Pragati. Pragati, okay, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, have you studied about the alpha helices, beta sheets?
Yes, sir. Studied in the last semester.
Okay, so these
Yes,
are also called as the secondary structures of the protein, isn't it? Okay, so many of the
Yes.
membrane spanning proteins have a alpha helical conformation, and there are many proteins which also have the beta sheet structure. Okay, and very often we also find that the alpha helices and beta sheets are together in the same protein. Okay, same molecule or same polypeptide also. Okay, same polypeptide chain will have these different sections. One section is alpha helical, then we have a beta sheet, and there are different combinations of these secondary structures. Okay, and then probably I do not know whether you have ever encountered the word called motif. Have you studied a motif? MOTIF. Yes or no?
No,
Yes,
sir.
What did you say? Yes or no? I couldn't hear it properly.
sir. I think it is associated with flagella.
Flagella. How? Okay, motif is just in very simple words. I'll tell you that it is a higher order structure. Okay, it is we can say a higher order structure which is after the secondary structure. Okay, so for example, in the if the alpha helix is a secondary structure, okay, then a alpha helix followed by a loop-like structure and then followed by the beta sheet. Okay, that becomes what is called as a motif. Okay, so these are also regularly occurring, you can say structures, regularly occurring structures in a protein molecule. Okay, and the order of these structures is higher than the secondary structure. So it's like something between a secondary structure and a tertiary structure. Okay, secondary structure and tertiary structure. So these structures are very common. Okay, alpha helices and followed by beta sheets. Okay, or beta sheet followed by alpha helix, and either there is a turn, or there is a loop formation. Okay, that is twisted structure. Okay, so these structures are very common. And just as an example, I would tell you that bacteriorhodopsin, we have already studied this molecule in photosynthetic bacteria, isn't it? Halobacteria, if you remember it. Okay, so in this particular organism, Halobacterium salinarum, this bacteriorhodopsin is a protein. It is a membrane protein, that is a membrane integrated protein. Okay, and this particular protein has 7 hydrophobic segments which are crossing the membrane 7 times. Okay, so just to show you an example, yeah, it is here. Can you see this? This is one single polypeptide. Can you see that on my screen? Okay, and in this single polypeptide, you can see here that one alpha helical region is spanning the membrane completely, followed by a loop. You can see a loop here. Okay, and then it is again going inside the membrane, spanning the membrane, coming out from the cytoplasmic side. Then there is a loop formation, and then it goes once again into the membrane for a third time, comes out here on the external side, and then there is a loop here. There is a turn here. It's not a loop, but it's a turn. Okay, so this structure is a loop actually, and this is just a turn. So helix, turn, helix. Again, there is a turn. Again, there is a helix, and then this particular portion, it may be the amino group or the carboxyl group, whatever it is, that is then facing the outside of the cell. Okay, and this end is on the inside of the cell, maybe carboxyl group or a amino group. Okay, but what I want to show here is that this is a single polypeptide which is spanning the membrane 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 times it is spanning the membrane. Okay, so in the case of this particular protein, bacteriorhodopsin, it is spanning the membrane 7 times. Okay, And this particular arrangement of proteins, membrane integral proteins spanning the membrane 7 times is also a very common feature. There are many proteins in the bacterial membranes or in the eukaryotic membranes which are spanning the membrane 7 times. Okay, so such proteins are also called as serpentine. There are some receptors, okay, receptor molecules on the membrane, and these receptor molecules do span the membrane multiple times or 7 times, and they are called as the serpentine receptors. Have you heard this word serpentine? Of course, I have not written it on the slide. Okay, but you can just remember this word, serpentine receptor. Have you heard this word? Akash?
No, sir.
Okay, serpentine, serpent. Do you know the word serpent?
Snake.
Yes, yes. Who said that? Is that Inamul?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. Inamul, you're right. Serpent means a snake. Okay. So just like the snake, you might have observed a snake either in a video or a real snake, and the way it moves on the ground. Okay, it moves by a zigzag kind of a motion. Okay, that zigzag motion of the snake is called serpentine. Okay, now these receptors, if you see the diagram here, okay, then they are also looking like a snake. They are spanning the membrane multiple times, either 5 times or 7 times or whatever. Most of the receptors do span the membrane 7 times. Okay, so they are also called as serpentine receptors. Right. So I have written this statement here. This pattern of clustered 7 hydrophobic membrane spanning helices is a very common motif. So when I say motif, it is a higher order structure. It is something higher than the secondary structure. Okay, and alpha helix itself is a secondary structure, or beta sheet is a secondary structure. But when we have the higher ordered arrangement of these alpha helices in the membrane, then that order is called as a motif. Okay, and these motifs are present regularly in many different proteins. Okay. Okay, then how are these proteins held in the membrane? It is held by certain kinds of interactions. Okay, so hydrophobic interactions between the non-polar amino acids, okay, that are there in that region. Okay, so this particular region which is spanning the membrane actually has amino acids which are non-polar amino acids. That is a very important thing you should know, that the region which is spanning the membrane is made up of amino acids which are non-polar in nature, okay, or hydrophobic amino acids. Okay, now these non-polar amino acids are interacting with the fatty acyl groups in the membrane lipids. Okay, the hydrophobic region of the membrane, that region is interacting with the hydrophobic amino acids. Okay, so always there is a hydrophobic interaction, and because of that interaction, these proteins are held very firmly within the membrane. They cannot come out very easily. Okay. So here is an example where we have different types of proteins which are shown in this membrane. Okay, and based upon the structure of such membrane integral proteins, we have about say 6 different types of proteins. Okay, for example, if you look here, the type 1 protein is where you have the carboxyl group on the inside of the cell in the cytoplasm, and the amino group, the amino terminal, is on the exterior of the cell. Okay, and there is one polypeptide or one single sequence which is traveling the membrane, or which is traversing the membrane. So these are called as type 1 proteins, type 1 integral proteins. In the type 2 integral proteins, we have the opposite arrangement. The carboxyl group is on the outside and the amino group is on the inside. Can you see that? So these are type 2 proteins. In the type 3 proteins, we have a multiple membrane spanning regions in the protein. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So if it is more than one region of the polypeptide or protein traveling the membrane, then you call them as type 3, irrespective of whether the amino group is inside or outside, or whether the carboxyl group is on the outside or inside. Okay, so these are called as the type 3 proteins. In the type 4 proteins, we have multiple polypeptides. Can you see here? Polypeptide 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 polypeptides of the same protein. Okay, so that is the quaternary structure of the protein, where we have different polypeptides arranged in 3-dimensional space. Okay, and each polypeptide has a region which is spanning the membrane. Okay, each polypeptide has a certain segment which is traveling the membrane. These are called as type 4 integral proteins. Could you all follow me? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Then there is a type 5 integral protein here, and then you will find that this protein is not actually spanning the entire width of the membrane, but there is a black colored line here. Can you see that black colored portion, which is actually suggesting that there is some kind of an anchorage. Okay, so there is a lipid kind of interaction. This particular protein actually is a lipoprotein. Okay, so there is a lipid interaction. There is a lipid part of the protein, okay, which is part of the protein, and that lipid is actually inside. It is anchored inside the membrane lipid. Okay, so this is called as a type 5 protein. And then we have a type 6 protein, where we have a membrane spanning section, membrane spanning segment is there for the protein. And in addition, it also has this lipid anchor. Can you see that? So it is again a lipoprotein. It has a lipid part which is inside the membrane. By hydrophobic interactions, it is interacting with the membrane. It is anchored within the membrane, and it also has a membrane spanning region. Alpha helix is there. Okay, so that is called as the type 6 kind of a protein. I hope that is clear to everybody. Okay, these are the 6 types of integral proteins. There might be a question on that on this particular topic. Okay, and then one more important thing that we should know is, if a particular protein, okay, if a particular protein has a stretch of at least say 20 hydrophobic residues or hydrophobic amino acids in a sequence. Okay, just remember what I'm saying, that if a particular protein has a sequence of about 20 amino acids in a sequence, okay, that is together, close together in that protein, then it indicates that most probably this protein is a transmembrane protein. Okay, because that particular stretch of 20 amino acids is something which may be present in the membrane, because 20 amino acids are required for completely spanning the width of the membrane. Have you understood that? The thickness of the membrane I have written here is 30 angstrom. So to span that particular portion of the membrane, if you can find out the size of amino acid, one amino acid, and then just sum up all the sizes of 20 amino acids in a row, then probably it will match. Okay, so 20 angstrom thickness of the membrane can be completely spanned by a 20 amino acid segment of a protein. Is that clear to everybody?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So another important thing is, all the integral proteins, without any exception, they